I grew up in a very old house in the Midwest that my parents got for a steal. It was originally built as a hotel, and the seller was very motivated to get rid of it. Now, growing up, weird things happen all the time. The typical malarkey that is easy to ignore for years and years. Footsteps, strange shadows, the feeling of being watched or followed. Swearing that you see someone in the room right as you wake up. The room in the basement that chills your blood every time for no reason, and the occasional hard-to-explain moments. I moved to the West Coast in my 20s for school and self-discovery. During a visit from my family, my sister told me that they had met a ghost in the house, and I was pretty skeptical, but my entire family backed her up. She was in her room and her radio had been acting up, so just in the off chance, she said, "Okay, if you are a ghost, could you please just stop it?" And the radio turned off. She waited a moment and then said, "Wait, if you are a ghost, turn it on." And the radio turned on. After some experimentation, they devised a system of communication. Volume up was yes, volume down was no. The digital readout on the volume was 0 to 30, so 1 was A, 2 was B, 3 was C, and so on. If the radio turned off, then it was a sort of hard no or off-limits question. And through this system, the ghost had explained that he wanted to be called Jason. He had died in the house in 1905 at age 5 when he was sick, and he lived in the house alongside us with his kind of mother and evil father. When they asked if he loved his father, the volume went to 0 and turned off. In fact, he refused most questions about his father. Apparently, he was the cause of the more malevolent experiences that people had in that house. I was definitely intrigued and went back home that year to visit for a chance to experience this for myself. However, when I arrived, Jason refused to interact with me. I would leave the table and the radio would pop on. My sisters would call me back and the radio would turn off instantly. He didn't want to have anything to do with me. As I thought about this, I remembered an experience I had before moving to the West Coast. I had been lying in bed one night when I felt a hand ruffle my hair playfully. I freaked out. I shot out of bed and turned on the light, pulled out my chest, and overconfidently yelled, "You do not know who I am or what I'm capable of. If you try that again, you'll regret it. Don't you dare mess with me." And then several picture frames on my desk flew off onto the floor belligerently, and I stayed at a friend's house that night. One night on my trip after Jason refused to talk to me, I spoke out loud, "Hey, I'm sorry if it was you who I yelled at that one night. I bet you were trying to play or introduce yourself to me and I got scared. I didn't need to be so mean to you, and I understand if you don't want to talk to me." The radio turned on. "Hey, are you the Jason I heard so much about?" And the volume went up. "Did I yell at you that night before I left?" And the volume went up again and then went back down to a reasonable level. "I'm sorry about that. Can we be friends?" And the volume went up again. It was incredible. He had introduced himself to several family friends as well. And to prove he wasn't some sort of hacked radio, he would do additional tasks. He would ring our doorbell. He would push crayons around on the table. He even did a really incredible trick for us. You see, while asking about the logistics of being a ghost, he had volume up that he could travel anywhere almost instantly. And to test it, we called up a family friend on the West Coast. This friend put out a newspaper on their kitchen table, and Jason then visited them and came back to set the volume to the date on the paper. The radio turned off for a moment, then seconds later it set the volume to 17. The friend said, "So close. The paper was for the 18th. But Jason was not convinced. Volume up, volume down, 17. Volume up, volume down, 17, 17, 17, 17. The friend checked again and apologized. "Oh, he's right. I misremembered. It's the paper from the 17th. He refused to answer questions about God or religion, and he gave us a few answers that contradicted as well. He told us that he didn't need to sleep, but he had told my sister a few months earlier that he did. One thing he seemed to know was how long he would be there. Through the volume Ouija system, he told my sister that he would be around until her 28th birthday, then his family would move on to the next phase. At the time, this was a couple of years into the future, and sure enough, we never heard from him after that. During his time with us, he would occasionally visit our dreams. We would have these extremely realistic dreams where a boy in a white hooded robe would say hi to us, ask to play hide and seek with us, or ask us questions about ourselves. Then he would confirm with my sister that he had visited us. He used to play the radio primarily, but in the final year he got better at manipulating other electronics. He could make printers print messages. He could manipulate televisions. He even sent us texts in the last few months. My mother had texted me, "I see you, haha," when I was back in the West Coast a couple of years after all of this. And I texted her back, "Did you come out here to visit? Where are you?" But she was confused. She said she was in the Midwest at home, and her phone had no evidence of sending a text with that message to me. I texted back, "I think Jason has sent me a message. Hi, Jason." And I got a reply, "Hi," again, not from my mom. My sister even once got a call with a picture of Obama in the caller ID saying Mr. President, but there was nobody there when she answered and apparently no callback number. The radio confirmed with a volume up that Jason was just goofing around. It was a wild few years with that crazy kid haunting our devices. My family still has that radio out just in case, but it hasn't turned on in years, and my sister is now well into her 30s. I know this will be met with a lot of skepticism. Even I was very skeptical until I was able to meet him myself. However, I think it's finally time to share this and to answer questions people might have about it. So, what do you got? Ask me anything. Does my family still live in the house? Yes, they do. My mom and sister are around, and there's been no communication or experiences from Jason or the father since my sister turned 28. You realize Jason is a demon/lying spirit or malevolent entity sent to trick you, right? Maybe. We haven't ruled that out, but it felt pretty chill. And yes, I get that could be part of it. How did the parents die? It's unclear to us too. I wish we had found more info on them as well. Why didn't you record it? Well, we tried. Electronic recording was interfered with or might even glitch every single time. Jason didn't want to be recorded. Camcorders glitched. Phone video didn't save or seemed to be immediately deleted. Even audio recordings didn't work around the radio when he was active, or otherwise he would just turn off. Did you ever investigate the history or death records of the house? Did a boy named Jason actually live and die there? We did, and we found a record of a death of a 5-year-old boy from illness. His name was not Jason though, but everything else was in line with what he told us. How did a 5-year-old know how to read, write, and spell? Honestly, I have no clue, but he could. I personally always figured that he had picked up some tricks in the afterlife, but who knows? And others have theorized that if this family had this property at the time, they might have been socioeconomically at the top of the class back then, and he might have received a better education than most kids at that time, and who knows, maybe even comparatively to now. You expect us to believe this crap? Where's your proof? I expect some will believe and some won't, and that's fine with me. I'm not here to prove anything, I just thought it was a cool experience and figured some others would enjoy knowing about it too.
Hey guys, thanks so much for all the support. If you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, please feel free to do so.
The night was pitch black, and the rain was pouring down heavily outside. I found myself alone at home, looking for something exciting to do. With my love for the paranormal, I decided to watch one of the scariest Hollywood movies, The Conjuring. My friends had dared me to watch it alone at midnight, and I had accepted the challenge. The movie was approaching a horror scene when I realized that my popcorn was finished. So I went into the kitchen to make some more. As I was in the middle of making the popcorn, I suddenly heard a blood-curdling scream that pierced through the silence and reverberated through the entire house. The scream sounded like it came from just outside the kitchen, startling me to the core. My heart raced, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. I couldn't help but wonder what was outside the kitchen, waiting for me in the dark. As I walked into the dining room, my eyes were immediately drawn to the laptop sitting on the table. The eerie glow of the screen illuminated the room, casting strange shadows on the furniture. I approached the table, feeling a sense of unease as I realized that the movie I had been watching was still playing. I must have absentmindedly brought it with me and forgotten to pause it. I took a deep breath and reached out to hit the pause button, but my relief was short-lived when I realized the movie was still playing. The scene that greeted me was enough to make my skin crawl. A ghostly figure perched on top of the wardrobe, pouncing on one of the girls. The hair on the back of my neck stood up as I watched the scene unfold, feeling a sense of dread creep over me. My heart was racing, and my palms were sweating as I frantically hit the pause button, but the movie continued to play. After a few attempts, I finally managed to pause it on a scene that sent shivers down my spine. It had been a long time since I watched a horror movie alone. I never felt this scared before, and I couldn't understand why I felt an overwhelming sense of fear. As I turned to go to the kitchen to grab my popcorn, I was suddenly overcome by the voice of the next scene, which echoed through the house. I hesitated, feeling a sense of trepidation as I turned to face the dining room where the voice was coming from. My steps faltered as I approached the door of the room again. My heart was pounding in my chest, and my legs trembled with fear. I couldn't fathom why this was happening to me. Was my laptop malfunctioning and causing the movie to glitch? Or was something more sinister at play? I couldn't shake off the unease that had settled on me like a heavy cloak. As I reached for the doorknob, I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer, hoping beyond hope that what I was about to witness was just an issue with the movie and not something paranormal. As I approached the laptop, the flickering light from the screen illuminated the room, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The scene that unfolded before my eyes was one of the ghostly figures haunting the group of girls, their pale faces twisted in agony. The haunting presence sent shivers down my spine as I drew closer, my fingers trembling with trepidation. While reaching for the power button, my heart pounded in my chest, and my breath caught in my throat. I inhaled deeply as I steeled myself and pressed the button. The silence that followed seemed almost deafening. Carefully, I picked up the laptop, feeling its weight in my hands, walked to my room and placed it back in its bag. The experience had left me feeling drained and unsettled, the haunting images still fresh in my mind. Not even the thought of food could settle my nerves, so I decided to retire for the night, hoping for a peaceful sleep. I was on the verge of drifting off to sleep when the sound of water flowing from the bathroom startled me. The resonance of the running water reverberated through my ears and caused my heart to race with fear. I felt a sense of apprehension rise within me as I peered toward the source of the sound with wide eyes. The sound grew louder and more persistent, causing my anxiety to escalate. Regardless, I knew I had no other option but to investigate the noise source and turn it off. With shaky legs, I reluctantly got out of bed and walked towards the bathroom. The sound of the water grew louder as I neared the shower area. My heart was pounding so hard that I could feel it in my ears as I extended my hand hesitantly to draw back the shower curtain. When I drew the curtain back, a sense of dread washed over me as I realized that the shower wasn't running. Instead, only a few droplets trickled out, creating a soft, clinking sound. My body started to tremble uncontrollably as I tried turning the knob as tightly as possible to prevent further leakage. I was struggling to comprehend why so many inexplicable and eerie occurrences were happening around me when I had never encountered anything like this before. It was as if the fabric of reality had been torn apart as multiple paranormal activities had unfolded before my eyes. As someone who had always been drawn to the thrill of watching Hollywood horror movies, I had never experienced anything that came close to that level of fear or unease. It felt like I was a character in one of those movies, except that it was all too real this time. Was my new apartment the site of some dark and evil energy? Or was something else at work? I couldn't shake off the feeling that something was very, very wrong. My heart racing, I suddenly jolted awake in my bed, my mind still caught in the grip of that terrifying nightmare. As I looked around the room trying to get my bearings, I noticed the movie's end credits playing on my laptop screen. I realized I had fallen asleep while watching it. Taking a deep breath and feeling a sense of relief wash over me, I quickly shut down the computer and reached for the jug of water on my nightstand, hoping to calm my nerves and steady my shaking hands.
As I graduated with an engineering degree, I struggled to find a job with a growth, and to be honest, I wasn't very good at engineering. I did the degree because at the time it looked quite lucrative, and after a series of failing jobs and lost career path, I was out to find a new one. The key skill that I had was the ability to deal with people, and so I did. I stepped into the real estate business, thinking it'd be an easygoing as communicating with people come very natural to me. So after learning the basis of what and what not to do in the industry, I joined up with an agency and started doing these frequent client visits. It took me around a year and all the good and bad experiences to quickly make my way to the top ranks. It was almost as if I was made to do this. It was then that the firm decided to make me manage a complete area instead of just single visits in the house. So now the real estate agents were working under my supervision and guidance. I taught them the ways to interact and the steps on how they can really sell a house during client visits. Forming a team, I taught them the most efficient ways to optimize open houses. Soon, our team was one of the best, and we were competing toe-to-toe with our rivals at Thompson Real Estate. All we needed was one more sold house to become number one. The call-in came from Emily. There was a client that wanted to visit the Pendleton Mansion. It was the mansion that would put us on the national map and a leading firm and real estate firm in the country. Emily came to me asking me a favor as the client who wanted to visit the mansion at night. It was an unusual request, but it was the chance that we were not willing to miss. So I decided to give the client visit on my own instead. I myself did not want to put Emily in any unforeseen trouble that might come forth if anything goes sideways. So I decided to handle this meeting on my own. And instead of doing the normal client protocol, I decided to stir it up a little bit. There were 3 houses that I lined up for them, and to make sure that no commotion is created, I selected the 3 houses right on the center of the city. Since they asked for the pretty vintage style, they were very selective houses that I had chose and were quite pricey, and surprisingly, they did say that budget was no problem and that I could go on to the maximum of it. I was arranging things at the first house when I heard a commotion on the outside. I went outside and saw the family waiting over the lawn. They were all dressed very well, and it was certain that they did not like the house. So I got outside and greeted them. They looked at the house and they were skeptical about it. They liked neither the house nor the neighborhood, and for once I agreed. The neighborhood did seem a bit noisy and were giving weird stares, so I gave them the address to another house and told them to visit it next night. Next night, the family reached before I could go on and arrange the house, standing in the lawn waiting for me. I greeted them, and we entered the house and started discussing the rooms. They asked if they could keep tenants here, and unfortunately the neighborhood did not allow that. And the fact that this was yet another nosy neighborhood made them walk away from the house. Hopefully, I was waiting to sign the 3rd house and was a bit confident about it, since there was no immediate neighbor. They arrived before me as usual and waited. They entered and were immediately in love with the place. They were digging the eerie vibe the place had and were quite happy with it. The house looked like the Gatsby house, and the seclusion from people and still being in the city was something they adored. They were keen on finalizing the deal, and so I took the papers out. I was set and done for the night, when they said that they will sign it the next night and they wanted to stay for the night at the house. They put on some music that I had selected for the furnishing and just started slow dancing. Their daughter, who must have been around 22, held my hand and started slow dancing with me. It was certain that the deal was final. So I entertained the thought of slow dancing with her. As a matter of fact, she was beautiful. A bit pale, but beautiful, and I was 27 and single. So for once, I did entertain the idea. She asked me if she would like to join her for the dinner the next night, and then the whole family extended the invitation, and I said sure. They insisted on staying the night at the mansion, and I did not mind since paperwork was almost done and they were pretty final about it. As I left the house and kept moving forward towards my car that was parked in the distance, a man approached me. He had a set of long binoculars in his hand, and it made me go into the alert mode since he was giving me all the vibes of a stalker. But then he looked at me and said, "You don't look crazy." I asked what he was talking about, and then went on to tell me that I was dancing alone in the abandoned house. I told him I was the real estate agent and showing the house to a family. He pulled up his binoculars toward the house, and exclaimed, "What family?" And then he handed me the binocular, and as I held it and watched, there was no one. So I opened the door and decided to check back. The man followed me this time. I called out for the family, but nobody came, and I assumed maybe they left. I was pissed at first because of the carelessness they just showed, so I went on to lock the door. The man with me continued, "What are you doing?" I told him I was locking the door so no one could enter and steal. The man said, "There is no door, mate. What are you closing?" And as I looked back, all I could see was a broken home, riddled with grass and several plastered cracks. The house was as old as one can get. There was no house, no family, and apparently, I wasn't a real estate agent. Well, not when I was alive anyway. I remember that I am just reliving my memories, and that house was the last one I had. I was shortly murdered on my way back from that house, and my murder was none other than the man with binoculars. I relived the memories of my life every single day and forget about them, almost as if I'm alive. I work as a security/nighttime attendant at an apartment building. It's 24 stories and one of the oldest in the city. One night, I'm sitting here when the phone rings at about 3 a.m. and I answer, "Hello, this is Daniel with Front Desk. How can I help you?" The voice on the other end sounds female, but was totally garbled, and the only bit I could make out was 23rd floor. I tried to tell the person that I could not understand them, and asked which apartment they were in, but again, gobbled the response. And I just made out 23rd floor. After the third time of trying to understand them, and the same response, I said I couldn't understand them. I would go up and meet them in the hallway, so I go to the main elevators, and surprise, surprise, they are both on the 23rd floor. Fortunately, we have an older service elevator, and it's only on the 7th, so I call it down, get it, and hit the button for the 23rd. But it won't move and the inner door won't close. But I go to unlock the reset panel, and boom, we start going up. Door's still open and freaking out a bit, and the elevator is shaking because it goes up pretty fast and isn't old. As I'm ascending, I just stay towards the back, and finally, I reach floor 23. I step out, door closes just fine, and I look around the hallway. There's nobody around. I walk along slowly, trying to listen for anyone awake who might have called, but there's nothing. So now, I head in the opposite direction and go towards where the regular elevators are. And when I get to them, they're just sitting there and their doors open. I was pretty freaked out, but I knew it would just be the elevator going Fritz. So I get in and figured out just reset them and get them to floor 1. When I heard the sound of the back stairwell closing, I quickly get out, go to the stairwell, and lo and behold, there's no one there. But the maintenance door to the machine room is ajar. And at that time, I'm the only one in the building with a key. At the top of the building is a large machine room housing all the really loud machinery that does stuff in the building and allows access to the roof. I don't like going into there because it's creepy as hell, and no one ever goes in there. So at this point,
I'm seriously freaked out, but muster up and head inside. "Hello," I shout, but to no response. The lights in the room flicker because they're terrible fluorescent, so I can't see well either. But at the end of the room, I can make up the roof access door and show us how it's slightly open. So I slowly continue forward, checking the space in between each machine as I walk by to make sure there's no one there. And there isn't. I open the roof door access. I can't see anyone ahead of me on the roof, but there is a slight wraparound if there was a jumper or something I needed to be sure. So I step out and leave the door ajar. Like it was almost immediately, the door is pulled shut. Now I might have written off as wind or something, but this door is hard to shut and really hard to open. Really hard. I immediately grab the handle and yank it open, slam it behind me, and run straight for the maintenance door. It automatically locks when it's closed, so I slam it shut too, and go back to the 23rd floor hallway. Get into an elevator which the doors are still open for, and go all the way down to the first floor. I go back to the main lobby, and as soon as I sit down, the phone rings. I pick it up. Don't say a word, and sure as hell, gobbly voice again. The only audible thing I can hear is a voice saying 23rd floor. I hung up the phone, turned off the ringer, and spent the rest of the evening just staring at the parking garage security monitor. There's been a bunch of creepy things happening in this building. It's basically like the Overlook Hotel at night. I walked past a dark room here on the first floor once and swore I saw myself standing inside it. The next night, as I'm inside said room cleaning, the lights flip off, and I turned around to see a quick flash of myself walking past there. Must be some creepy ghost or something playing games with me at work. Why was it trying to leave me onto the roof of beer holding, I can only speculate, perhaps it wanted to throw me off.